Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Season 4 is here, and of course with the Season 4 update for Warzone, we got quite a bit of weapon tuning. We got some buffs and nerfs for various weapons. We also got a handful of attachment changes that really change up a lot of the Cold War weapons with the barrels and just how effective ones are in certain ranges. So there's actually quite a bit that changed in the Season 4 updates. So today we're basically going over all the best loadouts, the top 10 best loadouts to be using here in Season 4. So as we go through them all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel, or if you happen to be a part of the over 50% of viewers who haven't already subscribed, I am always covering everything going on in COD. News, intel, updates, loadouts, it's all right here. So feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date. Also, right now, Code WHosImmortal is actually going to get you 30% off on G Fuel. So if you want to grab anything there, Code WHosImmortal has got you covered. All right, so as always, we've got our 10 loadouts here, all very conveniently named, and we're gonna go through these all. These are all the loadouts that I'd recommend for Season 4. These first two are gonna be pretty basic. They are my regain loadouts. So these two are the ones that I'm grabbing. If I die, I win a gulag, I come back. These are gonna give me ammo. They're gonna give me some weapons that are competitive enough so that I can actually, you know, bounce back and regain into the game. So the first one is featuring the Grau and the Psychov pistol. If you've been around the channel for a while, you know how much I love the Grau. This was by far my favorite weapon in Warzone history. The iron sights, the velocity, the range on it, all of it is just so good. It's a very, very well-rounded weapon. Even now, where it's had some nerfs in the past and it's been reduced in overall efficiency a bit, it's still very competitive, especially in this meta where, for the most part, it's very wide open and very diverse. So on the Grau here, we've got the pretty standard setup. We've got the monolithic suppressor. Of course, it's keeping us off the minimap. It's also extending the range and the velocity a bit. We've got the Archangel barrel for better range and control and the best iron sights in the entire game. We've got the Commando foregrip, the 60-round mags, then also fully loaded, so I do max out my rifle ammo because, of course, I'm coming back from a gulag or I'm trying to regain ammo. There is super important. If you're just using the Grau in general, take off fully loaded, add on the tac laser. That would be my normal go-to Grau setup. Then for the Psychov, because we are focused on simply regaining, this isn't probably the most efficient loadout overall because, again, we do have fully loaded on here, but for the basics, monolithic suppressor yet again, the 140mm automatic barrel. It's going to make the gun way easier to use. I've got the 80-round drums on there for the purpose of regaining. If you wanted to use the Psychov normally, though, I'd probably go for the 20-round mags, then sleight of hand instead of fully loaded. But for this case, I feel like this works out pretty well. Not going to be very mobile with it, but it's more so just there as a backup secondary. You want to be using the Grau, and hopefully you find a different loadout weapon to replace the Psychov with. But anyways, I also have the Prizrak grip on there for some better mobility, and like I said, fully loaded, but usually I'd probably have sleight of hand on there instead. Now for the regain perks here, I do have EOD. You're gonna notice on all the other loadouts, I actually have double time instead because I like that better mobility. But if you're trying to regain, mobility is probably not your first priority. Surviving is, and chances are you're gonna get hit with a nade, a thermite, anything like that over needing some better mobility. So EOD I feel like is a bit more important on regain loadouts. And I've also got a restock, and I've got amped on there as well. Of course, for most of the normal loadouts, we have overkill instead of restock, but I always try to switch to restock. That way I can keep replenishing my thermites and my stuns, which I run on every single class. Now for the second regain class, it's the same Psychov setup as before, but here this is my sniping regain. So if I notice the zone's gonna be up in some hilly areas or in some wide open areas, the sniper's gonna be really effective there. Or if I just feel like sniping, maybe I wanna go ahead and grab this. So in this case, I've got the Car, best sniper in the game. We already knew that though. And here I've got the monolithic suppressor yet again, the 27.6-inch barrel for the best range and velocity, the tac laser for better speed and stability, the sniper scope, and I actually am now using the cover shot reticle, but honestly that just comes down to preference. And then again, I do have I have fully loaded on there as well. I do have a regular car setup that we'll take a look at later on in the video though, so stay tuned for that. But for regain purposes, I really like this. Like I said, same Psychov setup, all the same attachments there. Now, moving on into the more usual loadouts, the remaining 8 are exactly that. These are the weapons and the loadouts that I'm using anytime I'm trying to frag out and, you know, drop a high amount of kills. This first setup here in particular is the Milano and the MG82. If you would have told me 4 or 5 weeks ago that the Milano would be in the Warzone meta, I would have laughed at you because previously the Milano was a steaming pile of garbage, a pea shooter, not good in any regard whatsoever, but now it's actually very competitive. Its mobility is really, really good. It's up there with the Mac 10, especially when you build it out to be a bit faster. It's TTK, very competitive now after the recent buffs, and I mean, I am pleasantly surprised by how good the Milano is. I've been using this a lot since the season dropped a couple of spicy 20s, pushing some 30s here and there. So this thing definitely is, it's solid. It's a bit different. It's a bit more unforgiving than some of the other SMGs, but I like it. It's actually very, very good right now. And the MG82, as we know, is the most broken weapon in the game. This thing is absurd. Spoiler alert, I highly anticipate this thing is going to be nerfed here very soon. So while it's in the video right now as probably the best loadout in Season 4, I'd say this combination here is my favorite so far. The MG82 is probably not going to be the best gun for very long. Hopefully it'll still be competitive when they nerf it, but right now it's busted beyond belief. The TTK is insane at all ranges. Like, it's definitely very broken. But getting into the attachments here for the Milano, we've got the sound suppressor because we are using this up close. We don't need the agency's range. I'd rather have the mobility from the sound suppressor. And then we've also got the task force, the best barrel on all the SMGs from Cold War, honestly. So you'll notice that's a pretty common theme. I also have the Tiger Team Spotlight on there for better mobility. This makes you run way faster. I love it. That mobility, to me, is crucial. I've got the 55 round drum on there. I never go for the speed mag because it does hurt your ADS. And honestly, the faster reload really isn't that necessary in most cases. Then finally, I've got the Raider stock on there for better mobility. That better sprint to fire time is a huge bonus there. And this setup in particular, you're going to notice a lot of throughout this video. It's pretty much the standard setup on all Cold War SMGs. Doesn't really matter which one you're using. If you throw on these attachments, it's probably going to feel pretty good. Then for the LMG, the MG82, the most busted gun, we've got the agency suppressor because you're primarily using this in medium and longer range fights. So that added velocity, that added control, that's going to be a big pro. I've got the task force barrel. However, match grade is also a great alternative. Pretty much the only difference here is on the match grade, you have smaller cons, but also not as efficient pros. So you're getting less pros, but less cons. Here on the task force, it's all the same pros and same cons, but it's just amplified. You're getting more pros, but also more cons. So you have, less speed on the task force than you do on the match grade, but you have less velocity and less control on the match grade versus the task force. So like I said, task force is just like 2 times everything, you could say. I don't know if that's exactly the denomination there, but it's just more of everything. So take that for what it's worth. Match grade, very good alternative. I like task force, though. It's been feeling pretty good. Speed, it's an LMG. You're probably not focusing on speed too much here. You're no Lightning McQueen when you got this thing out. Then I've also got the field agent grip on here. Not super necessary because the recoil is very, very easy on this thing. It is straight vertical, so countering it is very simple, but I felt like it was helping me land my shots a little bit more, so I went ahead, I used this. If I wasn't using field agent, I would definitely have the Tiger Team on there for better mobility. I've also got the 3 times on there. It's basically the T-pose reticle now. I love how that one looks. Then finally, I've got the Raider stock for better mobility yet again. Now, next up is a bit of an experimental class. This one is the Farah 83 in the Cold War MP5. Really good rifle, really good SMG, and for what it's worth, as we go through all these loadouts, as always, you can swap the primary, you can swap the secondary with other guns we're talking about. If you wanted to use the Cold War MP5 with the MG82, you could use the Milano with the Farah and any of these other weapons that we look at throughout the video. But when it comes to the Farah, no recoil whatsoever. This thing is so easy to use. You don't need a grip. You hardly need anything. The recoil pattern is next to nothing at this point because they've buffed the recoil so many times. In the Cold War MP5, we've talked about this thing time and again. It's got a really, really spicy TTK. The recoil, not the most convenient. It makes it harder to use than most other SMGs, but it's high risk, high reward here. If you hit your shots, if you're able to get familiar with the Cold War MP5, it is going to melt. Its mobility is good. So all around, these are 2 very well-rounded weapons. I like both of them, and on a setup together, they actually work really well. You got the medium and the long range with the Farah. You got the close range with the Cold War MP5. You're pretty much sitting pretty here. On the Farah, we've got the Grue suppressor because we are using this at range. I use the RPK barrel here because this is going to give you the most control and the most range and the most velocity. However, Liberator is definitely a solid alternative here because you are getting better velocity out of that with not as many cons. So I would recommend trying both of those out, and whichever one you feel like feels better, probably rock with that. But I like the RPK barrel. I've also got the Tiger Team on there yet again for that better mobility, the 3 times optic, and then also the 60 round mag. If you don't care about the mobility too much, probably swap out Tiger Team for like the skeletal stock or maybe even the serpent wrap so you get a better ADS time. But this setup I'm really enjoying. And then on the Cold War MP5, basic setup. We've covered this one multiple times now. Sound suppressor, better mobility. Don't need a barrel because the TTK is fine as is. And if you don't use a barrel, you get the nice iron sights as well on all the blueprints. So instead, I go for the Tiger Team yet again, better mobility. Bruiser, better mobility. So with this thing, you are absolutely flying and frying for what it's worth. Flying and frying. You love to see it. We also have the 50 round drum on here. Then finally the Raider stock yet again. Next up, we're going all Modern Warfare. The Ram 7, the Modern Warfare MP5. 2 weapons that have been in the meta for quite some time. The Ram, especially as of lately, is looking like it could be the best AR. Of course, the Amax got nerfed in Season 4. The Ram did not. This thing is definitely very, very competitive right now. I love this thing. It fries. The recoil takes a bit to get used to, but after you get used to it, you're good. The fire rate means this thing is good at any range. It hits hard. The TTK is very good. In the Modern Warfare MP5, I pretty much don't have to say anything about. It's been in the meta literally since Warzone released like 14, 15 months ago. It's been good. It's been nerfed a few times, but it still has remained as one of the most reliable and one of the most consistent SMGs. It's fast, it hits hard, good recoil control, like it's all around fantastic. On the RAM, standard setup, monolithic suppressor, the Ranger barrel, the Commando foregrip, the 50 round mags, and the VOK 3x optic with the T-pose reticle on there. And then for the Modern Warfare MP5, also the standard setup, monolithic integral suppressor, better than the normal monolithic, the 5mm laser, and the Merc foregrip to make this thing a hip firing machine. The 45 round mags, and then also the collapsible stock, but you could also use sleight of hand. You could use the Icon, the Stippy Grippy. That really all just comes down to preference. Now, speaking of the Amax, yes, it got nerfed. Yes, it is still a very good rifle. It's one of the better medium to long range rifles. The TTK and the shots to kill won't be as good as before, but that said, that nerf did not kill the Amax. I still am going to see a lot of people using this in the future. I think this will still be a very popular rifle just because people are familiar with it, they're comfortable with it, and it was not nerfed into the ground. But I am actually using a different setup here. Usually, I'd be using monolithic, Zodiac, Commando, 45, and VOK. However, I've actually swapped out Commando for the TAC laser. You're going to get not as much recoil control, but you are going to get better mobility. And I just really like how this setup feels. This is actually a setup that a lot of players have been using recently. The KD on this setup in particular is actually pretty high, so it's, you know, proving itself in game as a better loadout for the Amax. So if you're comfortable with recoil control, if you're familiar with it and you're good at, you know, countering that, take off the Commando, add on the TAC laser, and this thing's gonna feel really, really good. And then on the Mac 10, you guys know I love this thing. It's so fun to use. Using a bit of a different setup as of late. Sound suppressor for that mobility. Task Force yet again. Tiger Team, Raiders stock, and also the 53 round drum. Like I said, the basic SMG setup. Previously, I was actually using the Striker grip over the Raiders stock, but after trying it out, you know, after experimenting, the Raiders stock, that added sprint to fire, then also that mobility in general, I feel like is really, really rewarding. So this setup to me feels pretty solid. Next, we've got sort of another experimental setup. It's the Krig and the PPSH. The PPSH is one of the best SMGs in the game. Now, up close, this TTK is phenomenal. It is extremely competitive. At range, it's not the greatest in the world, but hey, you're not using an SMG at range as is. That's why we've got the Krig. Very minimal recoil. With the barrel upgrades, this thing is now even more effective. Very, very easy to use, I would say. It hits hard. Like all around, it's a really, really good rifle, and I sort of feel like the efficiency was raised after the Season 4 update with the barrel updates and whatnot. So here we've got the agency suppressor because, of course, we're using it at a range. You could actually go a few different routes. You could go the Ranger barrel. It's going to give you that better velocity and make it pretty good. To me, the Krig is more of an aggressive rifle, so I feel like you don't want the worst mobility in the world, but again, if you don't care about the mobility, throw on the mil spec. You're going to have those cons, but the velocity, the control, and the range are all going to be better than with just the Ranger on there. So sort of outweigh your pros and cons here. What are you looking for the most? Help that factor into whether you want to use Ranger or mil spec, but either of those are going to work really well. And then alongside that, I've got the 3x optic, the Serpent Rat for a better ADS, and the 60 round mags. You could also go Tiger Team. You could go Raider stock. If you really don't like the recoil, throw on Field Agent. There's a lot of different routes you could take with this thing, like I said, but overall, it's going to be a great rifle. And then when it comes to the PPSH, same SMG setup as we've been running. Sound suppressor, Task Force, Tiger Team, 71 round drum. A lot of ammo here, and surprisingly, you're not that slow. I thought going into using the 71 round drum, I'd be very slow, but we're actually really not whatsoever. So definitely worth using. And then again, Raider stock, the copy and paste Cold War SMG setup at its finest. Now, next up, we've got the other Season 4 DLC weapon, the C58 Rifle. And right now, all the attention is on the MG82 because it's just so overpowered and so broken. But after it gets nerfed, the attention is going to be on the C58, folks. This thing is one of the best rifles in the game right now, I would say. It's balanced, in my opinion. Like, it's definitely not broken. It's not overpowered. But man, it is effective as can be. No recoil. The thing does not need a grip even. You can fry at all ranges without a grip. Very easy to use in that regard. It hits hard. It's a very powerful weapon, especially at range. It feels so good. Amax 2.0 a little bit is the sort of vibe that I get from this thing. And then for the sake of this video, I'm pairing it with the LC10. Again, you could swap this out for the PPSH, the Mac 10, any of the other SMGs or secondaries that we've talked about so far. But the LC10 is definitely a really good SMG right now. It wasn't really changed a lot in the Season 4 update, so it's equally as effective as it was before. Can't really go wrong with it. It's a great hybrid SMG for close and some also medium range fights as well. Obviously, you don't want to be using an SMG at range too much, but if you had to, the LC10 is one of the better options. On the C58 here, we've got the agency suppressor. I like to use task force. Again, you could use ranger though if you wanted to. Better mobility on that, but also not as good of velocity and range. I've also got the 3x scope on here, the 55 round mag, and then the serpent wrap. Just like with the Krig, you could throw on a stock, you could throw on a laser. If you really have trouble hitting shots and staying on target, the field agent is definitely the best grip to use. But like I said, the recoil on this thing is so simple, I really don't think you need a grip. And then for the LC10, same setup as on all the other SMGs from Cold War. Sound suppressor, task force, tiger team, 55 round, and the Raider stock to round things out. Loadout number 9. We've got the Stoner, something that we really haven't seen in most of the better loadouts in the game for a while, but the Stoner has always been probably the best Cold War LMG, at least until the MG82 was introduced. This thing, it's slow, but it hits like a truck. This thing is gonna fry players left, right, center, don't matter. It's so powerful, and now with, again, the barrel buffs, it's even better than before. So I really think a lot of people could be using this as an alternative to the PKM or the Bruner if you were using that before. This thing's a very good LMG. Of course, you got to factor in the mobility. You're going to be very slow. Your mobility is not going to be good at all. But to me, the power is definitely what you're going for in that regard. And just pair it with something like the Bullfrog, which is incredibly fast, especially with the loadout that I've got. And you're good to go. You got that rotation weapon. You don't need to be running around with this thing in your hands. But as far as this goes, we've got the agency. We've got the match grade. But like I said before on the MG82, task force also works very well. Just sort of depends on what you want. This thing's already slow enough. I'm not trying to bog it down anymore, so match grade works just fine for me. I've got the 3x scope, the Raider pad, and the serpent grip to round things out. Of course, you don't need an ammo upgrade because it's got so much ammo by default, so that's a nice little bonus. You could use that attachment elsewhere. And then on the Bullfrog, we're going for speed yet again. Sound suppressor, task force, tiger team, we actually go for the serpent wrap, so it's not the copy and paste setup because, again, this has like 50 rounds by default. You don't need an extended mag. Then we also have the skeletal stock on there. If you really want to fly, though, throw on the bruiser grip instead of, say, the serpent wrap, and you're going to be moving very quickly. And then the final setup for today is going to be my sniper loadout, my main sniper loadout for Season 4. It's the car, and it's the Milano. Only thing different on the car setup here is that instead of fully loaded, I have the sport comb stock. It's going to give you that better ADS. So that's my basic sniping setup here. Then the Milano setup is the exact same as before, the copy and paste Cold War setup. So these two together, very good. The Milano is now a great sniper support weapon because it's got really good range, and now with the buffs, it's even more effective up close and in some of those medium range fights as well. So it's a great hybrid SMG, just like the LC10 or the MP7. Very good as a sniper support option. So yeah, those are the top 10 loadouts I'd recommend for Season 4. All of these very good in their own individual ways. Once the MG82 gets nerfed, this meta is going to be fantastic. It's really the only thing holding back the meta in my opinion right now, but that is going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, or if you found the video helpful, let me know by dropping a like. And of course, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD. Once again, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.